That Super Bowl ad is pretty funny because it was banned. It was banned after playing because Ben Shapiro objected to it. He wrote about it in his book. I'm actually mentioned. It was denounced on the House of the Senate, the U.S. Senate by like some right wing congressman because it had undertones of bestiality. They said so. Ben Shapiro wrote about it in his book. I'm actually met he didn't mention my name, but he said it was this disgrace. Like this is the kind of thing that the liberals are foisting this on America's youth during the Super Bowl. A monkey is hitting on a girl, like you know what I mean? Like there's an interspecies dating or something. And it was just a monkey with his arm around a girl going, "Hey, you like back hair? What's up, baby?" You know, and it was just a dumb, Bud Light ad. And it took on legendary proportions simply because it was denounced on the floor of the Senate as well as being mentioned. And I couldn't be prouder of that one.
This is Coop's Comedy Corner. Buckle up because it's funny as Coop's Comedy Corner.
Welcome to Coop's Comedy Corner. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and I got to tell people, go to coopscomedycorner.com. It's my swag shop. There's swag from my business podcast, The Coop Tank, my original show, Cooper Talk, and this show. You can get T-shirts, you can get kids shirts, hoodies, mugs, all this good stuff. So go there, and it's really good stuff. And I want to thank Jimmy Corhan, my producer, for putting that together for me. And, a few weeks ago, my friend Tom Catalbiano was on, and my guest's name came up, and I'm friends with him on Facebook, and he makes me laugh because he makes really good posts that, like, people get pissed off, and I love it because you can tell he's pretty much just stirring the pot, but it's just so funny when people get irritated. And also during that time, which I want to hear, he was stuck in Israel, and my guest is Bryan Scott McFadden. How you doing, Bryan?
Hey, how you doing, Steve? How's the merch selling? You're like pushing merch right at the beginning of the show. I love that. Buy the merch right now, even though we haven't even. Yeah, I love it. Buy the merch. How's the merch going? Is the merch moving, Steve? Is the merch moving? That's what I want to know.
I just got the store. I've sold 3 shirts. I sold 3 shirts, and they're not for this show. They're for the Coop Tank. But it's 3 shirts that I wouldn't have sold if it wasn't for Jimmy.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
So I want to start off because I know this is a great way to start the story off. Tell me about the Israel trip. And you were performing, and you were stuck there.
I thought we were gonna not start with that. I thought we were gonna go to like everyone's like, well, yeah, all right. So why not? Yeah, we'll wade in on this. This was a trip that a bunch of comedians had done many times. It was one that was like that was talked about. Like lots of comedians have done it. Lots of well-known guys have done it, and it was offered to me a bunch of times. And I had done Jordan. I had done the Amman Jordan Comedy Festival a number of years ago, and I had a great experience there. Audiences were great. I didn't, but I could never schedule it. I was either busy or out of town, and so they offered it to me. Oh, and then Ray Ellen, one of my best friends in comedy, said. He wanted to do it, and he said, "Well, it would be fun to do it together." He sort of talked me into it. This is my story that I'm telling people. Like he talked me into it. like Ray made me do it, and so we ended up going, and it was funny because we didn't really think about. I don't know why, but we were like, "Oh, it's another gig, that will raise the consciousness of wherever we go. We try to bring joy and laughter to wherever we go." Bring a little levity to wherever we go, and try to, as I do, try to raise the vibration of people with comedy, which I either try to do when I'm not annoying them online or whatever. And as you pointed out so eloquently, Steve. And so we got there. Little did we know, I have epic comic timing, obviously, and it was maybe not the most ideal moment in history to go to perform. And we were in Jerusalem, which is a very, obviously famous religious site for and holy, regarded as holy for all religions. And there's there's large people come from all over the world to visit there. And we were staying there. And then I don't know, have you heard, but a little bit of a tiff broke out. Like, I don't know how to, well, skirmish, as they say. There was a little bit of tension that kind of erupted while we were there. And so the war may have only lasted 12 days, but we were there for 8 of them. So it was maybe a short-lived war, but we were right there, smack dab, when it all erupted. First time I've done a show that had a missile strike during a show, I will say. Steve, I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but I don't recommend it. It was a missile strike during the show. Being narcissistic comedians, I always thought, well, what? I'm not that bad, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I have really, is this really? This is one of the more negative responses to my act I've received, and we were then went to a bomb shelter, which you do, as one does during a comedy show. I mean, usually, as I said, you know, I told the story several times, you know, the things were not going well in the comedy show before that. That was like the high point. When the missile strike is the high point of the show, then you know things have gone awry. It was the first time an audience of people has ever seen a comedian bombing during a bombing. Okay, I think that's a historical first right there. And yeah, so then yeah, we went down to the shelter along with everyone else, along with the crowd. I mean, people fleeing a bomb shelter from me bombing is a new thing. Right? Like that's how bad the show was going, that people were actually hiding in a bomb shelter and happy to be there. And the thing went on and on. We were kind of trapped in the Middle East. They shut the airport down, and we were documenting this all online, which was weird because we just had nothing else to do. We were sort of like trapped in this country. We had no idea what was going on in terms of like what the future would hold. They shut the airport down. We couldn't leave. And so we just we sort of documented in our own humorous way what we went through over there. So we were supposed to do like a bunch of shows. We ended up doing like one, and then did a few other ones that were like kind of guerrilla shows here and there, just to do something. And yeah, that's when the missile strike. You know, I think we did one show that was really great. The audiences were great. Really kind of positive thing, and then boom, you know, you don't want to go. And then of course a war breaks out, which happens. You know, what's funny is like about a year ago I was in Peru, and I was down there, and they had a coup happened, right? So I don't know what it is about me and my stand up that riles up all kinds of international hotspots. Wherever I go, there was a coup, and you know how it is. You're sightseeing in the jungle. Next, you're fleeing a military junta, you know, and they shut the airport down there. So then I was, you know, and I don't know wherever I go, they shut the airport down. I'm not able to leave places, and so it turned out okay. We escaped through Jordan. We had to go to the Jordanian airport after a number of days, just sort of hunkering down, and we got out of the country. It was a crazy excursion that is like, we'll probably put in a movie or a movie script or something. It was three comedians going to spread love and joy, and ending up hiding in bomb shelters. That was really just.
You can joke about it because it is funny in retrospect. But you know, I know you live in New York, and you know we're from the East Coast. And we go through some shit, but nothing like that. So, I mean, we can joke about it, but how fucking scary is it? Like, seriously, when you're sitting there, you're in a bomb shelter. I mean, you know, I've never been in a bomb shelter. I mean, were you scared at all? I mean, was it one of those things?
There were, well, you know? What's weird is that in Israel, they sort of have a kind of attitude of like, oh, they're not going to get rattled. First of all, they surrounded by stuff like that all the time. So they sort of go, we're not going to let this affect our day. So we're just going to go about our day. But of course, if you're coming from somewhere else, like we were from New York and comedians, this was not something we were used to. We did not have the stoicism vibe down yet. So, and also people don't like realize that when it happened, this was Iran. This wasn't like you're taking on the Houthis or some guerrilla fighters or something like this. This was a major power, and with supposedly an impressive military, and they the knowledge of like what was going to happen if it was going to escalate. That was the other thing. If other countries are getting involved. Unfortunately, Iran is not very popular in the Middle East. I don't know if you've heard. They're sort of like the not too popular sibling of the Middle East countries. They're not beloved over there, and so several other countries did not get involved in it. And there was like talk at the beginning. We were reading the news, going, "Is this, how long is this going to last?" And we didn't know if it was going to last months or like we didn't know if how we were going to get out of the country. It became like planes, trains, and automobiles at that point. It's like, does anybody know a guy? Anybody know a guy with a hot air balloon or something? Or is there a city bike? Maybe there's a route we could try something, or a tugboat. And we explored so many crazy options. We were like hearing there's a guy that runs a tugboat that you could possibly get out and get to Cyprus. And then there was somebody else that there were these cruise ships that were going to Cyprus that for birthright kids who come there to get a trip to Israel. And of course they didn't let us get involved in that. Like no, that's just, that's not for smarmy comedians. They you guys are on your own, right? So we were kind of forced to forage our way and find our way. It was me, Raylan, and Aaron McGuire, and we were just sort of on our own there, trying to figure out what to do. And it was scary. It was scary, like in a way that was not really describable. There was sort of this hunkering down tension that sort of released when we finally got out of there. We only look back on it. At the time, we were just sort of focused on making sure that making plans to get out and see what we could do. And you're kind of living in the moment of it. Were there times when we were scared? Sure. You're walking down the street, air raid siren. They're so got it down there. There's shelters everywhere. You have to go to like shelters everywhere in. Then we went to the U.S. Embassy, and they were no help at all. They wouldn't even let us go in. We were like, there was an air raid, and we were like, can we go in here? And they were no help at all. Like the U.S. Embassy was like, or a consulate. I forget where it was, a consulate or something. But they were like, no, we don't want the riffraff. We don't want a bunch of free, dirtbag comedians coming in here and messing with our bureaucratic vibes. So we were sort of forced to wander the streets. I forgot. We went to another hotel. They let us in, and we went to a shelter. There we were in these people's house for dinner one time, and they have a shelter built into their house. Many people do, because you don't really realize that in the Middle East, it's like the living with that constant kind of thing it's something they live with all the time. You can't even conceive of it. So there were moments of it was very scary. You couldn't sleep. That was the other thing, because you'd get woken up by air raid sirens. So you get 2 hours sleep, then you'd have to go to a safe room, and the hotel had a safe room, which was like a safe place on every floor. You would go there, reinforced room that you would just sit there with water until they call the all clear. And that's another weird thing, is like you get the notice on your phone that missiles are on their way. Okay. But you have like 20 minutes, like they actually have the trajectory, they know how long it's going to take. They know, and the Iron Dome is this amazing, sophisticated defense system that they have there that takes out most of, but stuff gets through sometimes, and you never know when that's going to happen. And it reminds me of Jonathan Katz's great joke where he says, the missiles are on there. He turns to a guy in a bar. It's late at night. Turns to a guy in a bar, and he goes, so you get the notice that the nuclear missiles are on their way from Russia. You got 20 minutes. What are you going to do? And he says, the guy says, I'm going to make it with anything that moves. Okay. And he asked me what I was going to do. And I said, I'm going to try to remain perfectly still. Right. Okay. Which is one of my favorite all-time jokes, the inimitable Jonathan Katz. I won't say things got that far in our little excursion where we were contemplating, immoral acts in order to fill the time. But there were some times of it was very scary. You didn't know what was going to happen. You didn't know if it was going to go get nuclear. You didn't know if they had something or something was going to escalate. Russia was going to get involved. No one knew.
See, and there are people, all you comics out there who used to complain about Betty's Fireside back in the day. Don't complain about that as a hell gig, because
yeah. This made Buddy's Fireside look like Dave and Buster's. Okay, This was nothing. Okay, David. I
So,
would go back to Betty's Fireside any day. Okay.
so you've been doing comedy for a long time, and I met you. I think I
Yeah.
said it was late '80s. Met and we both MTV. I mentioned you got it because I still remember. It's funny. I remember you got it because you knew people I knew, and I worked with you a few times, and some of those shit gigs, like Herb
Sure.
Silverstein or whatever. There's so many bookers, and I remember you
Yeah, there
wore
were a lot
this
of
suit on
Selman
MTV.
gigs, and there was a
Yeah,
lot of
but
full Selman gigs. There
you
was
wore. Do you remember? On MTV, you wore this certain suit. It was like a two-tone suit. I
yes.
still remember that. I don't know if you remember that. And it
Wow,
was funny
that's
because
funny.
it was. I don't remember your act. I just remember that suit. But it must have been great for being on TV for the first time. Because how long were you doing comedy before you got on MTV?
I was lucky because I kind of I did a lot of voices back then, and I did characters, and it sort of like got me ahead quicker. I think I hadn't been doing comedy many years. I remember I was on Star Search even back then, and I was lucky that I won the first show. I won I was the shortest reigning Star Search champion ever. I won in the afternoon, and I lost like 3 hours later in the evening show. Like it was, and I was relieved that I lost because I don't think I had enough material. If I had won, I don't know what I would have done. I literally do not remember like what I would have done if I had to. You're getting blurred out, by the way. You're getting pixelated, Steve. But no, I don't know what I would have done if I won another show. That MTV thing. That's funny that you remember that suit because I remember that outfit that I had on, and I made a joke about it. I said, "How many people?" That was my opening joke on MTV. Was like, "You like the suit? How many people think I look good? How many people think I look like a waiter from Star Trek: The Next Generation?" Okay, and that was my opening joke on that. I remember that because I had to call it out. It was a very interesting look. It was that '80s, kind of new wavy thing, I think. And I said, I think the joke was, yeah, that was the joke. How many people think I look like a waiter from Star Trek: The Next Generation? The Klingons ran out on their check again. Those bastards. Whatever. Anyway, that was it. And then I'm glad that's so funny that you remember that. I couldn't tell you what else I did on the show, though. That right. But I think I have it on VHS somewhere. It was
Isn't
like
that
one
crazy?
of those. Yeah. I mean,
I
I
was going to
have.
say the VHS.
Yeah, I have
Do you have?
tapes
Because
of.
I have a VHS. I have a VHS in my office here, and it's from me at the Richmond Comedy Club that Anita Fletcher booked. And
Oh
it's a
yeah, I remember
feature
that. I did
set, and
that
I
gig.
still have it.
Yeah,
It's like a 30-minute set. And I'm like, I don't have a
yeah,
VHS. I don't have a player anymore.
yeah. I mean, I love that room. Anita was great. I really enjoyed doing that room. And I have like a lot of early iterations of your stand up when I had no business really being on TV, and I was as good as some of the other people that were on TV, but there was such a glut and a need for comics in those days that I remember going, I'm on MTV, I mean, and I'm doing a set, what in the old days it was Letterman or Craig Ferguson. That was it. You weren't on TV. I mean, Letterman and Johnny Carson, and you weren't on TV. And those are the only options, and Carson was the only thing for a long time. I guess Merv Griffin or whatever. but yeah, then when I got MTV, but it was, I think I did it like twice. It was MTV Half Hour Comedy. There was VH1 Stand Up Spotlight. There was Fox had, I can't remember that show, Laughs or whatever, with John Mulrooney hosted it. I think there was another show. There was like an evening at the Improv, of course, which I don't know if I got Caroline's Comedy Hour. I was doing like all of those things. And I remember thinking, I have no business being on TV yet. Like I've been doing comedy 3 years or something like that, or whatever it was. And I wasn't like Chappelle. I wasn't like a prodigy like Chappelle was, who was like the funniest guy in the room when he was 15, it was like, but I did well, and I made a living, and I got, more shows and started working. Did every hell gig I could possibly do in Jersey. That's for sure.
What got you into comedy? Were you an acting guy first, or were you comedy? I mean, because you said you did voices. Were you doing voices as a kid, and you just thought you could do it on stage? Or what was your progression?
Both of my parents. Well, the reason I got ahead in show business probably is because it was the only thing I knew the only thing I ever was interested in, and it's the only thing. Both my parents were in show business. My father was a stand-up, and he was a voiceover actor. My father was on the Thundercats cartoon show. He was Snarf on the Thundercats, and he was Frankenberry cereal. My father was one of the top voiceover guys, and he used to just do voices all around the house all the time, impressions, and I picked that up. I have a really good ear for that, so I started doing that. So when I started in stand-up, and that's all I ever really wanted to do. I didn't have. It's like there's that thing in self-help books. You burn where what is it? The Greeks or the Romans? They burned the ships behind them. They landed at Sparta and they burned the ships behind. I can't remember, Sparta, Greece. I don't freaking know any of this, but I just remember the story was the general burns the ship so they can't escape, so as they fight their way out to motivate the soldiers. They said there's no way out, so we have to win. We have to fight. We have to kill the other guys, and that's what I remember. Sort of like I burned my own ships when it came to any other avenue of escape for a career, because I really just didn't. I was not interested in anything else. I was a security guard. I went to college, but I majored in communications. I had no idea what I wanted except show business, but I didn't have the guts to do it. And then one night I just said, I got to do this. So I walked on stage at a comedy club, and on an open mic night that I read about. I don't even know how it happened, but I killed my first night. And then I thought this is going to be easy. And then I ate it so bad the next show when I thought, okay, this is going to take a while. So, but my father told me, Bryan, just the only thing they'll remember is the last 5 minutes of your act. That's what I remember. It was one piece of advice my father really stuck with me. He said, remember the last 5 minutes. So I always wrote a humongously impressive closer. I was always good at closing my act. And I always looked at my act as open good, close big, and kill the clock in the middle, right? So so I always wrote some huge theatrical or really thing filled with callbacks and either funny voices at the end of my act. And so I always had a good closer. I was always good with closers. Some of my middle stuff I wasn't too thrilled about, but my closer was always good.
Well,
and back in those days, and by the way, back in those days, people forget. I remember all those cash gigs on the Jersey Shore and down. When you weren't working at Rascals, you were doing all these one-nighters, and there was one-nighters everywhere. It's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I remember getting $125 or $150 here and there. And I remember putting it in this big can or something like that, guy, because I thought this is not going to last. I'm just going to keep pocketing all of this cash and just make as much money as possible. I think I was driving a cab when I first started to make ends meet, and then I quit that. And I also started doing voiceovers just like my dad, and I started getting some work in voiceovers, so I was able to support myself in show business, and I never did anything else since then. So.
And it's funny because there was so much work. You're right. The one-nighters and the weekend gigs. I mean, the Gary Grants and the Andy Scarpattis and the Philadelphia clubs and the Rick Morgans. And then there was you could work every. I mean, I remember. I think I worked every weekend for 5 years straight. Even when my sister got married in Richmond, I booked a Chip Franklin run for the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Manassas and all that shit.
Yeah, if you graphed out just the gigs on Long Island. I remember one day I wrote a list of all the clubs on Long Island that I either worked with. And there was, just in the Hamptons, there was the East Hampton, I think it was the East Hampton Comedy Club. There was Laughs in Quogue. There was Chuckles in Mineola. There was East Side. There was Governors. There was the Brokerage. There was and I'm missing a bunch of them. There were so many gigs. There was one Boomers or something. There was, what was the Gary Grant one? Yeah, McGuire's.
Thomas
there was
McGuire's.
Thomas McGuire's. There were so many gigs on Long Island. I remember just you could make a living on Long Island alone. It was crazy. There were so many places. I just remember that Chuckles, East Side, Governors, and there was some. And I'm actually missing 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, there were so many out there. Because I did more of the Philly circuit. I didn't really go out to Long Island much. I didn't stay more Philly because I was based out of Philly. Then I moved to North Jersey. Now I know you eventually got Letterman, and and you said earlier it was only Carson back in the day, and then
Mm.
Letterman after Carson retired. Letterman was like the stand-up gig. There was
Yeah.
Leno, but Letterman was the gig. So how long were you in your career till you got Letterman? What was the process for you to get that show? Because it's not like Letterman put comics on every night. It wasn't
No,
easy to get. So how did you get the show? I mean, how long were
I'm
you doing comedy? And you,
yeah. I mean, I'm terrible in terms of time. I'm really bad with like I have very little sense of time. But it was like, wow, when did Letterman go off the air? That's a really good. Like I haven't thought about this in a long time because it's just been so. Uh, I haven't thought about this in a long time, but I've been doing comedy over like over 10 to 15 years at that point. And I remember. I don't exactly even remember all of the details of it, but I remember Eddie Brill was booking it, and I went to him and I said, I think I have a set that would be really good. And so he looked at it and he said, yeah, this is good. Now we'll work on it. And we worked on it for a long time. Like he would give you notes and say, cut this and cut that and cut this. And I had this bit that was really killer called What Women Want, which was sort of got me a lot of kind of, it was like a well-known piece. It was like this long bit that I used to close with. And that's sort of what got me Letterman. And so I, we worked on that. We honed that set. And the funny part is there was one line that got cut when I did my Letterman set. And if you watch the Letterman set, you can see me just about going to do that joke because, and they said, and I had that pivot because it was got right at like, it was about what all the contradictory things that women want. Women want a man who's ambitious, an achiever, who's successful both professionally and financially, who's not materialistic. Women want a man who is solid, steady, consistent, and reliable, who is fun, unpredictable, and spontaneous. Yeah, women want a strong-willed, decisive man who takes a stand, sticks to his guns, and doesn't waver, as long as he's flexible, open-minded, and can admit when he's wrong. Okay, yeah. And there was like all these really things. I worked really hard on it with a thesaurus. There was like 2 years of working on that bit till it was like really killer. And I think there was one line that said, women want a bit of a bad boy, a man with an edge, a little bit of mystery, even a little hint of danger, who loves kids. Okay. And it had nothing to do with pedophilia or anything. It just had to do with like a guy who's like a bad guy. And yeah, but he's also a family man, like it was like, who's a real family man. And they said the bad boy who loves kids, they didn't want that on the air. So I think I had to cut that. But if you watch the show, I think I'm just about to say it, and I remember that I couldn't do it because it's you're taping the thing. But I just remember, and that was such a thrill because obviously Carson, Letterman, that show was just so epic, and I mean, there's nothing like it. You watch it now, how amazingly funny that show was, and how creative it was, and how just, I mean, against the grain the Letterman show was, and the people that he had on, the wacky kind of comedy that he did. Carson was sort of more mainstream, and Letterman was sort of, and I loved Carson, and I would have loved to have done that show, but Letterman was sort of the guy that I would watch everybody when Leno was on, or the guys that would watch the show. And Kinnison was on, and Gilbert Gottfried was on. You would just watch Letterman. And Jay used to do when Jay Leno used to do what's your beef? Oh, I love the what's your beef thing. It really bothered me. Yeah, thanks, Dave. Back when Leno was so edgy and so funny and great jokes. And I remember I was such a comedy nerd. That was the other thing. I was obsessed with stand-up from a very early age, and I just would watch Letterman. Richard Pryor was my guy that I would just watch over and over and over again. And he was my inspiration as far as the kind of comedy that I would like to do is that thing. And I was a white kid from the suburbs watching Richard Pryor. And I would always try to, I would try to do Mudbone, and I would drink water. Yeah.
You know what's funny about back then too is I know when I would go to gigs with other comics and we would drive, we would listen to comedy cassettes. Like we were immersed in the shit.
Yeah.
Like I remember listening to Steve Wright and Kinnison and Dice Clay the day the laughter died, which is that he's dying in the room. It's danger pills. There's no one in there, but it's great. And that's the thing. There's one thing we all really were. It may be different now because I know now with YouTube and everything is different, but we were all not scholars, but we just were so into comedy. And it was even going to a gig we listened to comedy, and you'd be dying, like, oh my God, that's so funny. And I mean, I think it was
because
there was
because there weren't, people forget, like you look at it now, the astonishing difference between when, I mean, if you went to an open mic night at like, if you went to like the Improv back then when it was the audition night, it was like a mental institution had let out. Like the only people that were going to, with the fringes of society, okay, there were no good-looking comedians. You know, like that no one attractive did stand up. And when somebody did, it was astonishing to see. Like it was a freak show. And now you see people who are like models or you know what I mean? Like a Matt Rife never existed before, because a Matt Rife type who somebody looked like that never needed that, you know, never needed the desperate attention that only comedy could bring you. Good looking people never needed that kind of narcissistic nourishment, because they would just get it from their looks alone. Whereas, like, if you go to you go to a comedy club now, and there's like like the Dane Cooks, and you know, some of them are more attractive than others. You see, I remember when Jenny Jones broke out. Jenny Jones was a complete freak, because she was this hot blonde woman and she was doing stand-up, and that was like a unicorn. That was unprecedented, you know, like nobody had ever seen that before. Okay. And nobody had ever seen, like, attractive guys were too busy getting laid anyway. They didn't need to do stand-up to do it. Like, this was an arena for freaks, mutants, and the outsiders, and just nobody and it's just, it's the difference now is amazing. Like people on Instagram and people are immersed in the comedy world. And there's a sort of a simulacrum of comedy that you see where it sounds like comedy, but it's not really a unique voice. Like, it's just people doing kind of like what they heard already, a kind of, and it's not bad. Like, people are immersed in the world of comedy, the language of comedy, the rhythms of comedy. More people are good at it. You go to an open mic night, you're going to hear one or two jokes that are professional quality level jokes. Like that, where in my day, in your day, you didn't see that. If you went to an open mic night, everyone sucked except one guy, right? Like there was one guy who stood out on an open mic night. And now you go to an open mic and you go, that person's pretty good, a pretty good performer. And that's a pretty damn good joke. Like, you'll see a level of professionalism, or at least a mastery of because now as Mark Maron so eloquently put it about stand-up and people getting into stand-up, when did this stop being terrifying? You know, this was terrifying to do stand-up at one time. Now it's still terrifying to a vast majority, but because of classes, that there was never that. I don't know if you remember, but Jerry Seinfeld thought the idea of a stand-up comedy class was a joke. Like, he heard that and he was like, I remember Jerry Seinfeld doing an interview and they go, I heard there was a class for stand-up. I mean, I've never heard of something more ridiculous than that. And now there's classes everywhere. And I even teach one at Westside Comedy Club to help comics find their authentic voice, because didn't exist.
You're right. Well, it's funny because I'm starting to teach one for business people, but just to overcome their fear of speaking through comedy and storytelling, not stand up. But I think it's spun out. Like, I took a class you can't be taught to be funny. I'm sorry. You can enhance your class, but I took one in Philadelphia because I didn't know where to go. I was a kid from New Jersey. I graduated college. My mom said, go take a learning annex in Philadelphia. So I took the training. Yeah. It was Bryan McKim and Tracy Skeen. And they just told us, they made us put an act together, and then they put us to the Comedy Factory outlet to open mic. Yeah. And two of us stayed and the rest disappeared. But yeah, it was different. So now after Letterman, you did Letterman. Did you start getting more work? Did that be a change? Because did the clubs give you a little more respect? Like, oh, okay, this guy did Letterman.
The fact that back in the day, you were able to like go, okay, this guy's been on Letterman. That's great credit. And I auditioned for things, but I was also very busy as a voiceover actor. Like, I was the M&M Peanut. I was the Honey Nut Cheerio Bee. I was very busy. I didn't go on the road because I didn't want to miss voiceover auditions, which I sort of wish I had gone on the road back then, because I would have built a bigger following than I actually have. Like, I'm one of these guys that, like, I'm well known within, like, people go, oh, that guy's really funny, but I'm not a celebrity. I'm not famous, and I don't have like a big like array of credits. Like, I've been in movies, like uh, robots. I've done voiceovers for Ice Age 2 and Ice Age 1. I think I was in Ice Age 2. I can't remember. Like, I can never remember what my own credits are half the time. So I've always had this really solid career, but not like the breakout guy, like one of those guys that just got on a sitcom or took off, like the Ray Romano, obviously being like the perfect example of that. Like, oh my, they built a show around him. I was always this like kind of weird animal where I would audition for small parts. I'd come close to things. I think I came close to like the Jamie Foxx show or something like that. There was a show, and I think I lost out to Anthony Michael Hall or something. I can't remember, but they really liked me. But they were like, yeah, I can't beat the guy from Breakfast Club. So, I started working, and then I got a really solid 45 minutes, and then I did. But I'm such a perfectionist. Also, that was another thing that my own neuroses. I think like I was always the guy that like. It's a kind of a detriment to have the old school mentality in the modern world, because like I'll see people put up clips and I'll sit there tinkering with the same clip for like 2 weeks before I'll post it. Whereas people just do anything and they'll post something because it's all about content. It's all about volume, not about what you're doing. And I like to think, no, I have integrity more than that. You know what I mean? But the truth of the matter is it's a different world we live in now as far as stand-up goes. And you have to get over that. It's not the world we live in to just sit around tinkering to get every word perfect, which is what I was obsessed with. I wanted my bits to be like, there's like, who's that? Architect Louis Kahn built like only greatest architect of all time, but he only built like 8 buildings, right? But they're all masterpieces. Like, and that was me. Like, I have 8 bits, but they're all great. Like, or like to think that I am, but not really. That's a little grandiose. But I was always the guy who wanted to like write the perfect bit about this, or whether it was this, and I would work it for like ridiculous amounts of times. And I go, I can't do a special yet. I can't put that bit up. I can't audition for the Late Show for that. I'm not ready for that. And it was like, that's silly. That was my own perfectionistic craziness,
Now, you did get the Late Show with Craig Ferguson, right?
Yeah. Right around the same time, I did Letterman and Craig Ferguson back to back, which was like, I wanted to do late night, and I got like both of those shows. So, and then I was out in LA, and I was, worked at the Laugh Factory. I did Ferguson out there. And I got good responses, but I was right. It was right around that time that it was changing from, it used to be one night you get Carson and you killed, and that was it. Your career was made. You'd be headlining gigs, and it wasn't that way around that time. When I got on TV, a lot of people had already, unless you had blown somebody away like Dice did on the Dangerfield special, or Bob Nelson, or it was always somebody that exploded from the Dangerfield special, something that lets you to that. But what I got, I didn't, I wasn't, it was different then. It was like, oh, that he's funny, but there wasn't like, we're going to build a show around you, we're going to give you a sitcom. Like, we're handing out sitcoms like M&Ms at one point. I know so many guys that got like a show, and it either didn't work out, but then there were guys that, of course, it did, like with Ray and I mean, the list is long and luminous. Paul Reiser and every Mad About You. Maybe that's a bad example, but there was a bunch of shows that were built around people that came from the stand-up world. I remember Brad Garrett. There was a show called First Impressions, I think it was called, where he played like a radio guy, and he was just doing voices, and that because they knew he was very talented in voiceover, so they tried to shoehorn in as many voices into the pilot as they could. I think it was called First Impressions or something like that. And he was a good actor. He was good on the show, but the show never, it maybe lasted a couple of episodes or one season or something like that. And then, of course, he went on to bigger things when he got to be Ray's brother on that show. He was really funny.
Now you mentioned voiceovers. I know you know the voice work. Now, with your dad being a big, very successful voiceover guy, did that help you a little bit, or did that hinder you? Like, oh, here's such and such's son. Like, you're like, you're like musicians. They're your dad. Did it help you?
I know exactly. There's this thing about, oh, were you a Nepo baby? Did your father open doors for you? And the truth of the matter was, uh, my father was actually very like kind of not thrilled. I don't think that like he was my father had sort of like an actor who was like, all right, I'll help you, but I'm not. Nobody helped me, and he was not. But he was not the most helpful when it came to my career. But what he did give me, you cannot substitute for having someone around who just by his presence shows you what's possible. And seeing my father doing voiceovers and seeing my father on TV and hearing his voice and knowing what went into doing voices and knowing that was a path that you could follow and do, that was invaluable to me, which is like, it's not the same thing as my father opening the door and calling his agent and getting me in with somebody. Most of that stuff I sort of had to do on my own. My father didn't get me an agent. He was like, oh, make your own calls. I'm not going to help you. So, and I was like, all right, fine, Dad, because he was with like an old school agent anyway, who wasn't taking on young guys. So I did crazy stuff. I sent a kidnap note to agents with would cut out of magazine covers with my voiceover reel. And I got one call that somebody brought me in, and then I booked like one of the first things I auditioned for, and then I started getting more things, and then I got some really big accounts, and I knew how to do voiceovers for my dad. So that was like a great gift, even though he didn't open the doors for me. I think there was a story that somebody said from one of the Rat Pack kids or something. Oh, it was Emilio Estevez. I don't even remember. That said, I didn't tell them that I was related to Martin Sheen or something, or I can't remember. I don't want to do a disservice to him because it was maybe not have been him, but I remember one well-known actor whose father was very famous, who said, I didn't want to trade on nepotism, and so I didn't tell them who, even though they had the same name, like it was, and they look like them. Like it was obvious that this kid was related to, it's like to somebody they obviously knew, but the person didn't want to own that. Like they didn't want to say, yeah, my dad that was a breeze for me to get into the business. Nobody wants to say that. Nobody wants to go, my father being Kirk Douglas, it was an open door for me, like no one wants to say that my entire life was just made completely cushy by my connections. But the truth of the matter is that some people do have those connections, and I don't blame those people for taking advantage of them. Who the hell? Yeah. That's the weird. I never understood that. I never understood that only in show business are there Nepo babies. Like that, if you're working a bank, and your father says, my kids, I'm going to get them a job in an executive position here, which happens from the beginning of time. Like that's always done. So we're not supposed to. So, but of course, Richard Gere and Cindy Crawford's kid gets a modeling contract. You go, well, she was trading on that. Well, she's also gorgeous, and she's got the genetic endowment and the cheekbones. So that might have contributed to it as well. So, and also having talent and having somebody talented, and you could go in the Kirk Douglas son, Michael Douglas, but Eric Douglas was a struggled. You might have known that story. Like he was a Nepo baby, and that didn't work out too well. Okay, so it's never a simple thing, it's never that cut and dry. But my dad, having his presence was a great gift to show me what was possible in the business.
Now you said how long were you the Honey Nut Bee for?
I was the Honey Nut Bee for 2 years.
Because I know Charlie Schlater later became the Honey Nut Bee.
I heard. Isn't he at? Yeah.
And he left though because it became non-union. So he left.
Oh, okay. Is it non-union now? Wow, that sucks. Yeah. I was lucky. I was the M&M Peanut and the Honey Nut Cheerio Bee at the same time. That was kind of weird.
Now, when you go in for those auditions, how do you prepare for it? Like, you do a lot of different voices, as you said. You've always done voices. Do you sit there now when you're doing are you bringing in and this may sound weird, but I'm just wondering, like when you were auditioning, were you bringing in the same voice for the Honey Nut Bee as the M&M, or were you sitting there going, okay, I got to be different? How do you find out what you're going to do?
This is where my father was such a great gift, because my father would get pictures. He told me, and I went to auditions with him when I was a kid. And I remember he would get a picture of the character, and then you'd look at the character and say, what voice might come out of the voice of that character. And it's funny because when I'd get in a jam, I would call my dad up, and like there was a thing. I remember my father had a catalog, an encyclopedic catalog. My father's whole life was like immersed in movies when he was a kid, and my father could do voices of old actors that were in like bit parts in movies that no one remembers anymore, right? Like I had to audition for the voice of a coach, a football coach, and I called my dad up, and I was young. And I said, Dad, what would be a good voice? They want me to do a voice of a football coach. And my father goes, do Eddie Mayhoff. Okay. And I was like, okay, Dad, who's Eddie Mayhoff? And he goes, Eddie Mayhoff is in tons of movies. He always played the coach, and he was in with I think Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis movie called That's My Boy, and he was Jerry Lewis's father, and he had a voice like, we're gonna go and we're gonna hit him hard and we're gonna go and we're gonna fight and we're gonna get in there and we're gonna hit him hard and we're gonna go. It's kind of like a Ted Baxter kind of voice, like, and we're gonna hit him low and we're gonna hit him hard. You understand? And so I did that voice and booked the job because no one that was in their 20s, no one could do Eddie Mayhoff. Like, and it had a distant echo of something that someone would say, that sounds like a coach, but you can't place it. My father was a master of that. He had one of my favorites was, I said, Dad, I got to do a old British cop or something. And my father did do E.E. Clive. I remember he said, and I go, who's E.E. Clive? Okay, Dad, who the hell knows these people? And my father goes, E.E. Clive was the old constable who was in all the Invisible Man movies. Okay, and he had a bobby hat, he had one, and he had a nightstick, and he would always find a dead body in an alley, and he always say things like, it is what's going on here, and if you, it is what's going on here, or is he'd be attacked by a werewolf or something, and so like that was E.E. Clive. Like, I didn't know who E.E. Clive was. My father like gave me like that, he would help me in terms of like voices like that, and then I was able to like create my own, I knew that, you do a voice like this, it's sort of like a buzzing bee or something like that. And sometimes that's right for that job, and I had a good facility with range and that kind of thing. So, and so that's what I was kind of good at. I also was really good at surfer dudes, and no one was doing that.
Give me one.
Well, I did, like for like a stretch of like 2 years, I was in New York. I did all the surfers. I did Keanu's voice for Bill and Ted's Excellent Cereal. They put out a cereal for Bill and Ted's the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure movie, and the cereal, Saturday morning cereal, came out, and it's got cinnamon oats and marshmallow notes. It's the most excellent way to start your day. Okay. And I booked that. And so I did that. I got that commercial, and I had all the Saturday morning. You'd always hear like, new wacky windups from Wendy's. There's one in every pack. Collect all 6. And that was really hot for a while. I had like a 2-year run where I was like on tons of commercials where you would hear me doing the voice of that guy or this guy. New wacky windups from Wendy's. There's one in every pack. There was Wendy's used to have these prizes, and I did the whole campaign for like a lot of those things. So that was kind of cool.
Well, I was looking at your website. People go to his website, BryanScottMcFadden.com.
BryanScottMcFadden.com, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I didn't know you were the, I forget what company, you're the rabbit on the airplane. What was that for? I mean, you were talking about the long distance relationship.
Oh, yeah. That was, Frontier Airlines. That was one of the longest running campaigns I ever did. I was Jack the Rabbit for, Jack the Rabbit is sort of like this really dull rabbit guy, and he was we have a long distance relationship. She's in LA, I'm in DC. I mean, whatever. It doesn't really work very well, and so that was like they had talking animals on the planes, and I was the rabbit, and that was another great campaign that lasted like 5-6 years or something, and then that was
and then
one of
you're on your site. You're a big orange pig in a grocery
oh yeah
store. What
yeah
was that for?
that was for bottom dollar foods, bottom dollar supermarkets it was called, and there was a whole chain of them in the Midwest or something like that in Pennsylvania, and it was like low prices and when pigs fly, and it was a flying pig. Like, you can't get low prices and good quality food, and that'll happen when pigs fly. And so I was this smarmy pig who would just float into the aisle and go, "Hey, what do you got in the cart there? Oh, Chips Ahoy. Hey, you ever notice you never use the word ahoy in your life? Like, hey, there's some new printer toner. Ahoy. Hey, can you pass that pencil? Ahoy. Yeah. Yeah, you never see that. Anyway, having a good chatting with you, and I would just fly away. That was like it was another great campaign that I was in,
And then the final one, I think I may be wrong. It may have been a Super Bowl commercial. Was it Bud Light with the monkey or the chimp?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about that.
Yeah, I did it.
That was a Super Bowl ad, right?
It was a Super Bowl ad. It's my one Super Bowl ad I've ever done. No, I actually did two. I think there was another one. I can't remember what it was for. Where I play a guy. I was on camera where I was a guy throwing a bunch of golf clubs. But the Super Bowl ad is pretty funny because it was banned. It was banned after playing because Ben Shapiro objected to it. He wrote about it in his book. I'm actually mentioned. It was denounced on the House of the Senate, the U.S. Senate by like some right-wing congressman because it had undertones of bestiality. They said so Ben Shapiro wrote about it in his book. I'm actually he didn't mention my name, but he said it was this disgrace. Like, this is the kind of thing that the liberals are foisting this on America's youth during the Super Bowl. A monkey is hitting on a girl, like you know what I mean? Like, there's an interspecies dating or something. And it was just a monkey with his arm around a girl going, "Hey, you like back hair? What's up, baby?" And it was just a dumb, Bud Light ad. And it took on legendary proportions simply because it was denounced on the floor of the Senate, as well as being mentioned. And I couldn't be prouder of that one, that I annoyed these guys. That's hilarious. If I ever see Ben Shapiro, I'm just gonna go, "Hey, Ben, you wrote about me in your book and you don't even know it," right? That's pretty funny. That's like one of the weirdest things about doing voiceovers, you never know what you're gonna do.
Hollywood is changing. I talk to a lot of actors. It's just the industry's changed. Everyone's leaving Hollywood. Sitcoms are dying. I mean, there's actually my friend Nick Bakay has produced the Leanne show, which is but there's not many. Like, him and Chuck Lorre did the show Booker, which was great, but that wasn't a campaign that got canceled. But there's not any new sitcoms. So Hollywood's changed. What's the voiceover world like now? Has it been changing? Because I know, like, that's when the Honey Nut went non-union. I know it seems like a lot of stuff is going non-union. What is the voiceover world like?
The voiceover world is very different. It's because, for a number of things, the internet, just like it did with cab drivers, with Uber and everything else, what the internet has done is it's opened the floodgates by which it used to be that if you were a voiceover actor, you had to be in New York or LA or in some in Chicago. That's where all the ad agencies were, and that's where all the recording sessions were. There was no internet by which you could audition, or even, you would have to go to a studio and you would have to audition for casting directors in New York or in Los Angeles. And so all the actors were in Los Angeles and New York. Now there's a guy in Wyoming with a booth in his closet that can audition for the same job that I will be auditioning for, and submit for that. And his lifestyle, what he would need to get paid for that job. He's like, in my father's day, if you did one commercial, you'd make, $80,000, for one commercial, like, as $50,000, it's more than that sometimes. And now, and you would have to make that in a way because you would be living in New York or Los Angeles where the cost of living is higher. In Wyoming, a guy will say, "Hey man, I'll do the commercial for $500, like." and he's able to record it and do it for cheap or whatever. And yeah, some of those guys are not as good or whatever, but some of the agencies are smaller, they don't care. And so it's a very different, more competitive business now. Very celebrity driven. That's the other thing. In the old days, that was unheard of. There was not, that was not a big thing, but now every big major account, almost every one of them is like, hey, that's John Hamm. Hey, that's it's Anthony Hopkins. It's just all those jobs used to be done by union actors that, voiceover scale actors. We get paid for that. Like a perfect example of that is like Shrek. Like in movies, there wasn't this, nobody remembers this, but there were animated films, but no one knew who the guys were voicing them. If you remember, like the first one was like, I think it was Beauty and the Beast. I mean, if I could ask you to name anybody in that movie, you might come up with the guy from MASH, and what's the actor's name? I'm like
Robbie Benson. Robbie Benson.
Yeah, Robbie Benson, exactly. And Jerry
Benson was the Beast.
Yeah, Robbie Benson, but no one knew that. You didn't hear that and go, "Hey, that's Robbie Benson." Like that was a big thing that he was the voice of that. Jerry Orbach was the candlestick, I believe, and the teapot was what's her name? Agatha Christie. The woman that
Angela Lansbury.
Angela Lansbury. Agatha Christie. Angela Lansbury. So there was sprinkling of character actors in those things. But if you go back to like old Disney movies, you don't know who those actors are. They're not well known. And so my father did movies, plenty of like movie roles and stuff like that in voiceover things that then now everything is done by a celebrity. And it's funny because you talk about how the budgets for movies, it's so expensive to make a movie. But if you see Shrek, you got Eddie, you got Mike
Myers,
John Lithgow, you got Mike Myers, and I think it was Cameron Diaz is the voice of the princess. And if you took and there are scale actors that could do some of those roles. Nobody could replace Eddie, nobody could replace Mike Myers, nobody's going to do that. It's like in Finding Nemo. Nobody could do what Ellen did in that movie. That's just electrifying. Really funny, unique, and her voice jumps out at you. But all those roles now are done by big star actors to promote the movie, and none of them are done by. And you could get a scale actor and save yourself $15 million to do some of the smaller parts, but they won't. Because it's like, we want the marquee to be filled with big names, and so that's just the luck of the draw. So I'll get 2 roles in Ice Age 2 or Robots. I think I have 2 voices along with Robin Williams. I get to say I was in a movie with Halle Berry and tell people I was in a movie with Halle Berry and Robin Williams. And they go, yeah, really? What's she like? And I go, I don't know, because I was in a booth 9,000 miles away and nowhere near her, So anyway, the voiceover business is very different now,
But now, so these days you do stand up, and you do the voiceovers, and do you do cruise ships or anything, or are you just like do you hit the road? Because cruise ships, I heard they're good money. I mean, it's changed. The allure has changed. But do you do them at all?
I did one cruise ship in the early 90s. I did the Big Red Boat. The Disney cruise, and it was not for me. It was I just didn't like having to get into my head and entertain little kids and elderly people and edit every word out of my mouth. It's just not for me. It was just one of those things where I was like, God love them, you want to do that? I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. And I was lucky because I had another source of income. If I didn't have voiceovers, I still do voiceovers, and I got a few things running, but I don't. The cruise ship thing was just not. I didn't like being confined to this space where if I had a bad show, I had to talk to everyone. And so, that was not fun. So I was not a cruise ship guy. I've always been a really solid stand-up act that goes on the road. I'll close shows, headline gigs, and people go, "Wow, you're so funny," And I'm like, hey, I'm pretty happy with that, And so I'm not pursuing the cruise ship angle right at the moment. Who knows what will happen in the future?
You said you have a few things running right now. What ad can we hear you on right now?
I actually don't. My father has inculcated in me a kind of thing where I only talk about voiceover jobs that I'm on when I'm not on them anymore. Like,
Okay.
I got some radio spots. If there's something current, and there might be like a campaign coming out, which I'm not going to talk about, but
No.
there, we'll see what happens. I don't. My father used to always. I don't know. I had this weird thing where he'd say, "You don't want anyone thinking about you. You want them thinking about the product, and you want them to, you're nobody in the thing." And it's like, yeah, it's not that important to me to go, I'm the voice of the Honey Nut Cheerio Bee. Now that I'm not, I talk about it, right? But I didn't, when I was the Honey Nut Cheerio Bee, I didn't bill myself as the Honey Nut Cheerio Bee. Like I was just like, yeah, that was me. I'm the voice of the Honey Nut Cheerio Bee. And no one would have cared back then anyway, when you were doing stand-up. It was not, I think it was not as, it's not as interesting as it is now. I tell people I used to be, and the whole audience perks up when they hear that. That's really funny to me. Like I was on Letterman, I was on Craig Ferguson, I did all this stuff. Nobody cares. He was the voice of the Honey Nut Cheerio. Wow. Do you know Count Chocula? Anyway. So
I got one final question for you.
Yeah.
One final question. I always end my shows with this. You had a good career. You've been busy. The voiceovers. Looking back at your career through stand-up and voiceovers, it can be personal or professional. What makes you proud? Like when you look back, what are you proud of in your career or life?
Oh, what a great, really cool question. I love the fact that I've never done anything else. Like I love the fact that I've had a really solid career, and that I love stand-up to my I love stand-up to the point that I always saw stand-up as like an end to itself, which I probably should have seen it as more, because I founded a Shakespeare company. I was an actor as well. I trained. I have like a classically trained actor, but I didn't do enough auditioning for certain things. But what I'm proudest of is the fact that I really have this like love I have a pure love of stand-up comedy that and some of the bits that I've written that people still remember and talk to me about, and some of the ads that I've done that still, like just getting Ben Shapiro's goat and getting him upset with me and triggering the right wing response to my bestiality vignette on that commercial was like so funny to me. So I love the fact that I'm pretty proud of the fact that I've had a nice, like really good, solid career, made like some really, good money doing something that I love to do. And I still love going on stage and doing a new bit. That's what I don't know. Stand-up comedy is it's the most revered and most disrespected art form. It's like elevated by people and denigrated by people at the same time. You get heckled in it, like in a way that musicians don't have to deal with. And it's just still revered. And when I come up with a new joke or something, and something that I nail something, and I go, oh, that's so good, I really take a lot of pride in that. And I've always had a very, very powerful, love for stand-up that I still to this day do. Except when I have a bad show, and then I hate it. But
right.
Then I'm ready to quit the industry
man.
and move to Guam.
I'm glad you came. I'm glad I reached out to you. I'm glad Tom mentioned your name, so people, you can go to your website, promote yourself. What
you can go to Bryan Scott McFadden. Yeah, you can be Bryan Scott McFadden on social media, on Instagram. I've been trying to get better at that. That's the new thing that you have to do. And I've come from an old school. I'm an analog guy in a digital world, where I sort of like, now I have to promote myself, and I don't like, cranking out material. But find me on B Scott McFadden on, I think it's B Scott McFadden on Instagram and TikTok. You can find me. Some of my stuff, I put stuff up there once in a while. And go to BryanScottMcFadden.com. My dates are up there. BryanScottMcFadden.com. I have my own podcast with Dustin Chafin called Chasing Comedy, where we work on bits and we sometimes we listen to AI and see what AI came up with for the joke, and see how we did, right, compared to AI. And usually we're 1,000 times better than AI, so I'm pretty proud of that. But it's called Chasing Comedy podcast. You can Google that. and we're on YouTube and Apple Music and all that, and Spotify and all that stuff. So you can check that out.
So people check him out. Also check me out. Go to coopertalk.net. I have over 1,040 episodes over there.
Yeah.
I just the wonderful Chris Sarandon on, who's been in Dog Day Afternoon and a bunch of other things. And Spider Stacy from the Pogues, he'll be coming up. Also go to
cool.
YouTube, look up the Coop Tank, which is the Coop Tank is my business podcast. I'm on a round table with 3 local Philadelphia, South Jersey business people. And don't forget Coop's Comedy Corner. Go to Comedy Trainwreck. Thank you to Jimmy Corhan. Jimmy does great things with a lot of Philadelphia comics. I have a show, Coleman Green, John Kensel, Ed McGonigal, Corey Alexander. We all have shows and Jimmy produces them. And don't forget my swag at coopscomedycorner.com. I want to thank you for listening. Please check out Bryan Scott McFadden, and you guys have a great week. Bye-bye.
Coop's Comedy Corner.